I needed this cup of coffee. It's 1966. That was the year of the World Cup. You know, they think it's all over. Well, hopefully not for me. Although I was having problems, there was a complete ban on me doing any photography at home. But quick to my aid came the next door neighbour, who said she got a garden shed and I was quite welcome to turn it into a dark room if that's what I wanted to do. So I begged, stealed and borrowed any old carpet to black it out and also give it a bit of insulation. By the time I'd finished putting all the carpet around it, it looked more like a Persian tent inside more than a dark room. Electrical supply was a bit of a problem at first. I couldn't get enough power in there to run an electric heater to keep the place warm and dry, and at the same time run my enlarger and dish warmer. All I could do was to run a small cable from her bathroom through the light socket out the window and into my dark room. That just gave me enough power to run my enlarger and the dish warmer. For heat, what I used to do, I had a big block of candles in the corner, probably about 10 or 12 candles, and I would light them for about 10 or 15 minutes before I was ready to start printing. That did warm the place up quite well. The red light I had at the time was just an ordinary bulb that I got from an electric fire, you know, the type that used to have a imitation flame sprinkling at the back, but it did work. So that was my dark room up and running. Forgot to say, I bought a Gnome enlarger. Very pleased with it at the time. It had a ray lens and I could get nice pictures up to about 10 by 8 size, and they were quite reasonable. Having got the darkroom sorted, I needed to upgrade my camera, so it was search everywhere, bring and buy sales all over again. Hock shops, we used to have them days, or pawnbrokers, you probably knew them as. But I did come across a little camera, a Mastre camera. That was a V35, and it did have speeds and apertures, so at least I'd got basic control. But my best find was I got a Voighlander, so a VITO CD I think it was, and that had a locking device, means that I could actually put the shutter and the aperture together, and when I moved it up and down they'd still say locked. It also had a bonus for me, was an exposure meter. So my next camera from a rummage out again was this Mastre V35 35mm camera, and I would have more control, i.e. the shutter speeds. I don't know if you can see from here, we're going from B right through to 225th, and I've got aperture control as well, so it's 2.8 up to f16, so I could start taking pictures very early in the morning, last thing at night, just as the sun's going down, and have control using a combination of shutter speeds and apertures. I'm still using guesswork for distance, although this does have a dial, and I think it goes in feet, 3.3 feet to infinity. More often than not, I'd be about mid-range, about 10 feet. That gave me most of my reasonable photographs, and they're pretty sharp. The next stage would be to have control at night, so we've got to go to flash. At the time, this is the simplest and easiest form of flash, the old bulb method. So that clips on there. I then have to plug in the back a connector. On the side of the body of the camera, just there, is my connector for the flash. A simple push on mechanism. Then my flash goes from the back into the shoe. There's a wind down locking mechanism, so that's fixed securely in place. And then I need to put in a flash bulb. The only thing is, it was still giving you what photographers used to have a problem with, and that's red eye. There was a way around it, mechanical again. If I unclip this section on here, you can see that I'm going to be able to have adjustment by this little gadget that pushes into my hot shoe. Then my flash goes in to the back. That's pushed home, locked down. But now when I'm using the camera, I can pull it right back. You see what I mean there by the angle, and flash off the ceiling, allowing for bounce. That would give me a much more evenly balanced light on the subject. Bit cumbersome, but it worked. This was a big leap forward for me. A Voighlander, I think it was VITO CD. Beautiful case. It also had an adjustable strap, so I could put on the long strap if I was carrying it on my shoulder, or if I just wanted to hold it in my hand, shorten the strap. They even gone to the extent, when they're designing the case, to cut a window in the bottom so you could see how many frames you'd got left to take, how many pictures you've already taken. Right, let's have a look at the camera more in depth. I had a lot going for it. Beautiful little camera. It just felt right as well in the hand. Let's have a look. How do you set the exposure meter? Right, so I need to tell it what film I'm putting in, 50, 100. I need to set it by pressing this little dial, moving it around till I get the required number that I need for the ASA. Once I've done that, I move the little red needle, and can you see the pointer? I move that round, and that says, right, we're locked on, that's the correct exposure. The number I've been given tells me, by pressing this little black lever here, move it round, and that says 12. That's an indication, same as you get on an ordinary light meter. Right, when I move it round now, it's telling me, because these are interlocked, I can move up and down, and the exposure will be correct which either way I go, if I want a smaller depth of field or greater depth of field. So that's telling me 5.6 125th. Now if I want a smaller depth of field, just move the shutter around and it's 225th f4, so that stays in alignment. If I want a greater depth of field, I can bring it round to f11 at a 30th. Obviously I'm going to put that on a tripod, but that's as simple as that. To release the film, once you've got to the end of your film so that you can wind it back, you just push this little lever here and that pops up, and then you can wind your film quite easily back. Very positive. None of these little winding needles that you have to get hold of, which I've seen on some of modern cameras actually. And then once it's wound, I can push that down, open the back and take my film out, and away we go. That can go ready for processing. The camera that came after this was the VITO. I think it was the VITO CLR. Only a year between them, but that had a rangefinder. At the moment I'm still having to guess the distance. If you put it somewhere around about 10-12 feet, that'll give you pretty good picture whether you're close to something or distant. It's an average, but you can close it down so it will go down to a meter. That's pretty close. Or the other end, far end of the scale, take it up to infinity. So it was a pretty good camera in its day. Still use it. It's a bit of a workhorse. Never lets me down. I never had running water in my dark room in the shed, but what I had to do was put all my prints in a bucket and then rinse them out later, take it through to the bathroom in home. And I created this in the 1960s. I can't believe somebody gave me, I think I got it from the place I was working at the time, and it was being thrown away. I thought I can use that. What I invented basically is a washing unit which would spray out through these holes here. The heavy chemical then that I was trying to wash away would seep out of the bottom holes and then down into the bath and into the waste, and away it went. You just had to regulate it by turning the tap to the right sort of pressure, but it worked, and it's still, as it's here, working today. Great little invention. It actually started off having copper fittings, but as time's gone by they've actually gone green and mouldy, so I replaced it with plastic only in the last 4 or 5 years. Give us a tick if you liked it so far, subscribe and see how the story develops. The next part, 1967, I end up 16 weeks in hospital, and that's all down to the mods and scooters. Keep smiling, see you soon.